So now I will introduce you to this new tool created by the Global Cement and Concrete Association, which is the 2050 roadmap, which is a pledge to build a sustainable and resilient future by tackling environmental and economic decarbonization challenges. So they identified a few levers that will lead to a net zero construction using concrete and cement. And these are efficiency in design and construction, efficiency in concrete production, savings in the binders and cement, savings in clinker production, carbon capture, decarbonation, and recarbonation. So how this roadmap is utilized is it is presented to um, different countries, and each country gets the opportunity to localize it and define it more based on their locally available materials, their um, their socioeconomic needs, and how well it can be easily applied in the country. An example is the roadmap that we worked on in Tanzania, which um, if this graph specifically shows the gray bar from left to right. The gray bar is the current um, emissions from the cement and concrete industry. The blue bar is the emissions expected in 2050 if they continue as is, business as usual with no changes. And then the green bars are all the reductions that can be attained by um, implementing different levers to reduce their emissions. And as you can see, for a country like Tanzania, low carbon cement or lower clinker cements are much more accessible due to the availability of materials such as clay, which can be added into cement for making a new blended cement such called limestone calcined clay. But then I've also highlighted the two levers, which are design and construction and concrete, which when we make this roadmap, it's in interaction with the um, cement producers and key role players in the industry. And they did not feel that design and construction and more efficient concrete could have bigger impacts, which is contrary to what the GCCA believes, which is efficiency in design and construction can yield 22% in savings, and efficiency in concrete production could be 11%. So this is where it comes into this is where the question rises of why is it that the idea of of having better design and cleaner concrete production is so hard to manage in Africa. Okay, so I'll provide an overview of the construction market in your average sub-Saharan African country. Typically, the construction market is split between engineered construction and self-construction. With the engineered construction, this is your big buildings, massive infrastructure projects, typically tendered, typically public money, government, whether the government is paying for it or it's a formal development in that sense of the word. Then self-construction is more so the average citizen going out of their way to build their own, whether it's a tiny development or their own single floor house. So we'll split these two into the formal sector and the informal sector. And when we speak of the informal sector, this isn't to say slums or all of that, but it's rather the subsistence homeowners, the incremental homeowner developers, the debt finance homeowner developers, and the micro developers who are self-financing in their entire construction project. And then we can look at the skyline of a city like Lagos in Nigeria, where you can see all these different styles of construction, where you can see the big, massive projects as well as the small buildings right here up front, and the massive infrastructure development that is continuing as we go on. So all these parts of the construction market exist in every single African country. So now I'd like to provide more emphasis on how the informal construction can be targeted. And once again, this is not referring to any form of inadequate housing, but rather this is an informal construction that occurs typically with um, the the subsistence homeowners that are working with artisans that maybe might not have formal training, but have been trained by their cousin, their brother, and it's just something they picked up along the way, and everyone can kind of incrementally save money and build over several years or whenever they do find the money for it. And this is quite a massive part of construction in Africa, as I will show you now, because this is an area in Dar es Salaam, Madale, which is 25 kilometers outside the CBD. This is around the aerial view in 2006. And then 10 years later in 2016, you can already see densification occurring. There are no services still, no formal road infrastructure has been introduced into the area. And then 8 years later, further densification. There's finally signs of services making it into the area. However, the people have continued to build individually without the intervention of the or the assistance of the um, assistance of the government. And this type of progression and agglomeration is so common in Africa. And even when you speak to the cement companies, typically they have a 90% bag market rather than and 10% bulk market, as opposed to in Europe or more developed countries where they have the complete reverse. So this is a really important part because all the cement that is being consumed is going into areas such as this. And this infrastructure development cannot be ignored because even in and around these densification of areas, you can see the development of the industries around it. And it is absolutely necessary to keep this in consideration rather than assuming that we cannot actually intervene and assist. We now have to look at the African construction values and what is it that people care about. And on this metric, it's from high consideration to low consideration. And we can't deny that Africa is different and the needs are different because affordability is a massive part of um, the informal sector because if I'm self-financing, it has to do with what kind of budget I have. The next one is existing techniques. People will typically rely on established methods that they've seen well understood and reliable. And this is not unique to Africa, actually. This is more so a thing that's common in the construction industry due to an idea of just risk is not a good thing to have when you're trying to build houses and bridges and things like that. Then accessibility, again, a massive consideration, and flexibility depends on if I'm building incrementally, how easily can I receive the same material if I stop building for a year and I start again in another year. Then on the lower consideration side is the efficiency, technology advancements, and the sustainability. But social status is a bit of a middle factor, which is actually the reason why it's very important to have this discussion, because typically people will have an idea of the type of house they want to own, the type of house they would like to build and live in. And in most societies, concrete house or something with bricks and then plastered and well designed is something people aspire to. So these aspirations define how people are inclined to want to build. So we can't completely eliminate concrete from the discussion because in a lot of places, concrete blocks, and those types of materials are highly favored as representations of a specific social status.